Charles, we're about to embark on the inaugural episode of the Casita Conversations, and I have with me today, honored to have with me, Joe Racich, who is a musician, a business owner, my friend, and my father-in-law. And we're going to talk about your incredible story, your life, your business, finances, all of the above.
Well, I'm blessed to be part of your first inaugural and show, and I'm just blessed to be here.
Here we go.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's do it. You started you're a Midwest boy through and through, and we could talk about
Probably the nicest town in Indiana. I mean, it's, there's a lot of towns in Indiana, but I think this one probably
really stands out.
Absolutely stands out. Gary, Indiana, as they used to call it, the armpit of the nation sometimes, but Gary was great back then.
So there's the second most famous person from there is Michael Jackson.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So born there, but then you migrate out here.
Went to south side of Chicago, and then from there got tired of it. Said I want sun and heat.
See, I remember that, and that makes me wonder how this ice fishing thing plays into it. So you got tired of the heat, maybe?
No, actually, it was the best of both worlds for a while, right? I mean, you had the wintertime here in Arizona and the summertime where it's hot as Hades here in Arizona, and you've been to Minnesota a number of times. The weather, 70, 75. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So it's a different lifestyle totally.
Yeah.
We only live on this earth one time, so you take advantage. You move around, you experience as much as you possibly can, and you always come back to visit the family and the kids. And
soak in the sun. I mean, here it is November. We're sitting outside. And, yeah, it's beautiful. So back to the Midwest. Tell me about, I'm fascinated with, we took a road trip last year, and on this road trip, we passed this place called Tucumcari. And the conversation for the next 3 hours in our car turned into Bloomington, Indiana, and after or before, you tell me. And before Bloomington even.
Yes.
And then it's fed into Bloomington. So tell me about Tucumcari.
So, grew up in the, 60s, right? Going to high school in the 60s, and, who came out, right? All the rock bands, right? The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, all the guys wanted to, they wanted to be cool, so they wanted to get into the music. So all of a sudden there was this entourage of people wanting to play guitars and drums and keyboards. And, where did the garage band start, right? Probably in the 60s. And we were a garage band, and we were playing a lot of different type of music, and got to the point where we were actually getting some jobs to play. I was a drummer.
So you were a professional musician at one point. Right? If you're getting paid for it,
I got paid for it. I had a double bass Pearl drum set, and I was still in high school. So our high school was pretty strict. So our hair couldn't be long, but you hit it as much as you possibly could, and we tried to name the band. So prior to that, my sister went to Indiana. It was going to Indiana University, and they went to the Rose Bowl. So a bunch of guys and some supervisors, adult supervisors, drove from Gary, Indiana, all the way to Pasadena to the Rose Bowl. On their way there, they went through this little town called Tucumcari, New Mexico. Now, this has, no meaning at all until Dick Kelly, my good friend, who was the bass player. He had a Hofner McCartney bass guitar,
this, yeah.
and he, for whatever reason, bought a postcard from Tucumcari, and he threw it in a box when he got home. And so we're just rifling through the box, and we see this card, and it kind of fit the music we were playing. We kind of got out of the heavy rock and stuff like that. We were kind of playing Birds music and little country stuff, and so that was perfect.
Influenced by what would you say the influences were? You mentioned the Beatles, but
no, it was David Crosby, Stephen Stills, that type of music at that point in time. We all kind of liked that. It was
folk, country, maybe Americana rock kind of thing.
Yeah, it wasn't really rock. I mean, we'd of course, that was for our own satisfaction, and we'd play the other stuff that people like.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Was it the same? I went through my band days in late 90s through the early 2000s.
I saw pictures.
Yeah.
You're marrying, who are you marrying?
We'll get into that one too. I always wonder if it's the same. Was it the same as it was for me back in the 60s? Was it, were crowds and people more into music, less into, more accepting of different kinds of music? Was the general vibe, I mean, you've been through both now, was the general vibe in the 90s and 2000s the same as the 60s, or was there a different level of excitement or a different level of passion around the music?
I think it was passionate just because it was so, again, new. You know, the Beatles came on board, right? I mean, it was the British invasion. You know, prior to that, who was it? Elvis Presley, who else? He just passed away, the keyboard
Johnny
player.
Cash and Elvis Presley and
those guys.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was a different type.
Something new was happening.
Yeah, and it was, it was new to our community. So, people were, I just remember, it was funny because we'd be playing even house parties. And just, guys would just, they're watching me play drums. Trust me, I'm a little heavy-handed sometimes, but, I had fun. And they were just, they would just get around you and watch. It felt a little awkward, but it was, you didn't think about.
They were fascinated.
You don't think about it then, because I think they just wanted to do that, just like I wanted to do it.
Yeah, well, it's certainly different now. Now you think about being able to put a room full of people together, and maybe unless you're drunk and high, that kind of thing doesn't happen. It's more of a how do you entertain me now? How high can you jump now?
I agree.
Me, right?
I mean, there's some bands that I really, really like, and I go to see them, and I want to just sit and listen to them play. And listen to the songs because their songwriting is great, but everybody else is, they're drinking and talking and not paying any. It's background music for them.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Would you ever get back in a band?
Would I? At my age, probably don't have the time.
Yeah. Let's talk about the time. I mean, you're doing all kinds of things. I mentioned a few of them earlier, but how long has it been? 40 years since you started your professional career? Is that?
Probably 1981.
1981.
Well, prior to that, I was a school teacher out of college.
Well, let me back up because I want to talk a little bit about your influences. It's really fascinating to me when you get where you are and you take a path that's totally different than your parents, because we're all raised a certain way. We all have these influences on us growing up, and when you follow in the same path, I think it's a different. It's maybe a little bit easy, not easier. It can still be a tough path, but you've at least seen the path gone down before. Where the path you went down, you never really saw that. You blazed it from the start. So your folks, your father wasn't a teacher.
No, steelworker.
Steelworker.
Yes.
And you saw something there when you must have that said, that's not for me. And then you thought teaching.
Yeah, I really didn't know what was for me. You kind of.
Did you try being in the steel mills?
I worked there for 3 years.
So you did try it out. Okay.
Oh yeah. And I went to college after high school. Didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but my dad said, who was the steel worker, "You're going to college. I don't care what you do. You're gonna go to college. I don't want you working in these mills." So it was good money, and I worked my way through college, and the first year I worked in a mill, and the first year I was in college, I really wasn't all that crazy about it. It was not a big deal. I still didn't really know what I wanted to be. But I went to work in a steel mill that next summer, and I was convinced, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I'm going to go to college.
That's not what you wanted to be.
I did not want to do that. I was something else. Yeah. I was a ladle liner. Yeah, it was hard, dirty, hot, and I realized that's not the path I wanted. And my dad, he told me he didn't want to do it. That convinced me for sure.
And there's all kinds of general degrees you can get, but something inside you said, I need to teach. Or did you have friends that kind of were going down that path that you were with? And
my sister Louise, I give her a lot of credit for guiding me as much as she possibly could and helping me, find my direction. And she was in the business school, and I had no idea what i.e. business was. I had a cousin who was very successful in the business area, and though I liked him, I didn't like his business practices. So he was something that I didn't want to be. So I equated, a little shallow, but I equated business people all being like that.
That way.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So business school was out.
School was out, and my oldest sister, Jackie, she had gone to school to be a teacher. Louise ended up being a teacher. No guidance, really, other than, you're going to college. So I said, I'll take education classes. So I did that, taught school for 7 years.
What, middle school? Is that right?
Fourth grade for 2.
Fourth grade.
Sixth grade for 5. Is that 7?
That's who's teaching the younger generation. So
I love teaching, by the way.
Yeah, so that's another question.
Once I got into it.
7 years is a long time to spend in something that you must not have hated it, right? Because you don't wait 7 years to figure it out.
I did enjoy it. Those kids were amazing. It's just, it's amazing. And how old am I? I'm 22 years old, and I'm, educating kids. So it was a good experience. Just couldn't afford it. I could not afford it. Then I, by accident, tripped into the insurance business.
So you say you can't afford it, and you would. What would you say to other teachers out there that are thinking the same thing and maybe scared to make a jump? Trying to make that career jump, and let's talk about that just a little bit, because it takes some balls to make those kind of jumps. From steel mill, which you knew could support a family because you watched it happen. You did it for a bit, and then you're like, I'm out of that, so let's move over to teaching. Totally new environment for you with a little bit of your sister doing it, right?
Yeah.
But then a complete 180 jump. None of us was born with the idea that we would be in insurance, right?
That's right.
But there's also no safety net there. I mean, I think the story that you have is not one of an easy. Someone just handed you a blank check and a salary, right? So that's a big jump.
It was a big jump.
What kind of, did you have a safety net? Did you have some savings? Because I think a lot of people that watch this will say, I don't like what I'm doing, or I figured out that I want to make a change, but are just paralyzed. Mm-hmm. Paralyzed.
Yeah.
And this is a massive change. So how did you make it? What were some of the specifics? You had a savings account?
At that point in time, I had no savings account. I started selling life insurance part-time. A friend of mine.
So 2 jobs, because you're still teaching.
A friend of mine who was also a school teacher, a couple years older than me, been teaching a couple years longer. It was no surprise to anybody what teachers made. So if you were teaching for 5 years, you knew pretty much what people were making. 7 years, you were making a little bit more. So he was making a little bit more money than me, but oh my gosh, he had 2 sports cars. He owned his own home. He took these lavish vacations. He had fantastic camera equipment that he would take on these vacations and take great pictures. So I thought, he inherited some money, and I accused him of maybe doing some illicit things at the time. But he said, no, he goes, I sell life insurance. I go, what? And he kind of explained to me how, if he wanted to take a vacation, he'd figure out how much it would cost. Then he would back it out and say, okay, I got to sell these many policies. And he would go out and do it. He was really smart. He knew what he was doing. And he asked me if I wanted to sell life insurance. And I started laughing. I said, no, there's no way. No way. A couple more years of teaching, a couple more years, got married, had David Racich, that many people now know, and he, I couldn't support him. So I said, selling part-time life insurance, figured it out, and I was making as much or more selling life insurance a couple of days a week, a couple hours a day. than I was teaching school. So I just slid into that life insurance business. And because of teaching, I had an aide whose husband was part owner of the largest property and casualty agency in the south side of Chicago, a place called Palos Heights. And she knew that I was moonlighting, selling insurance on the side, and she had told her husband. And he said, wow, we could use a life guy in our agency. See if he wants to come and talk to me. So she explained it on a Saturday. I said, yeah, I'll go in there. So I drove in on a Saturday and we sat down, and all I could think of is leads, right? Fresh leads. Where did that come from? That there was a movie about that. Eric Baldwin, I think, was in it. He goes, no salary, no benefits. It's just go ahead and you've got all access to all of our customers. Go sell life insurance. And there was companies that I was kind of used to. He was used to selling some of the traditional life insurance from property and casualty companies at the time. Sure. And to me, they weren't all that great. So I had a couple that I was selling on the side and brought those in. It was wonderful. And I knew that summer, in my mind, I had to sell enough so that come September, when school would have started, and I'm not going to teach school and I'm not going to get that salary anymore, that I replaced it. And I did.
That's awesome.
It wasn't, trust me, when you think about, the income back then was meager, but I was just enough.
To do in one summer.
But just enough to get by. And then from that point forward, it grew.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 questions to follow that. One is, did the fellow, I forget his name, that was teaching with you, that was selling life insurance.
Right.
Did he stop teaching and make his career in life insurance?
Right.
He did?
Yes.
Okay, so you knew that it was at least feasible to do that.
Well, I broke away from him
And went to your PNC.
Went to a PNC shop. And, unfortunately, so did our relationship split.
Got it.
Over that.
Because he wasn't making coin off you
anymore.
Right?
I think he had some ideas that just weren't going to fit. I was more concerned about my family and having enough money for them.
Yeah.
But I wished him well, and,
sure.
So it is what it is.
The other comment you made that I think is hilarious to me, only because I've known you for so long, and you said, when he came to you and said, well, I sell life insurance, you want to sell life insurance, and you thought that was absurd. And for anybody that knows you, they would say that seems like the most natural thing in your life.
But became that.
But you never saw yourself as the relationship manager, salesperson.
Well, no. I mean, when you think about people go to college to learn, business, sales, marketing. They go to college, they get degrees in that, and then they go on to, work for a corporation or whatever, and hopefully use those skills. I just learned it as I went. Wow. And you throw ideas up against the wall and see what sticks. Yeah. So only by the grace of God, there go
That one stuck.
Yeah.
And you went so you were supporting your family, which at this point was a family of 4 total, right?
Yeah.
David, Christy,
Karen.
Family of 4, supporting totally off of commission-only life insurance.
Commission-only life insurance
Sales.
Yeah.
Which is, I've done that. That's scary. Because some weeks are really, really good.
Right.
And other weeks, you got to write a check to cover another one.
So...
Which I never did. I think that's illegal, so I never did that.
But I, it was great. I mean, I would just call up the clients. It was... For an agent who has the ability to tell stories, that's our job, and to have somebody to tell that story to, if you could, number one, you got a story, you got a product, and you have somebody who's going to listen.
And kind of teach too, right? I mean, you're also still kind of in a way teaching.
More on the recruiting side.
Yeah.
But
we'll get there.
But I learned not to teach when selling. Otherwise, you'll be there for 2 hours. You're trying to talk about mortality charges to a customer. Why do that?
And if they don't grasp it, they'll not follow through, which is the worst case scenario
exactly.
for everybody involved.
Yep. I did start that way, but I learned as you go. You can't, but it was really nice. It was just fantastic. It was easy, and commissions came in.
Wow.
And the agency kept a share of the sales, which is only right, and I kept a share and made that living.
So we talked about people that are wishing they could do that. And your point of no return was you set a goal that said, I'm not just going to quit. I'm going to work my job, but I'm going to work another job, which means very little time to yourself, I'm sure, or family or anything. But I'm going to do that for a limited amount of time, and here's what I have to hit. And if I hit that, this is my new path.
Right.
And you hit it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then and I said, okay, so.
Do you think if you wouldn't have replaced your salary that first summer, you'd still be teaching today?
No. I think I knew it was too good. I mean, if they had a huge block of clientele. They were very smart. They were part of a marketing group called MI Squared, and I don't know if you ever heard of them. You were in the PNC business.
Yeah.
And they were doing mass marketing before mass marketing.
Nationwide.
Well, they were doing it in Illinois, but they were selling policies. And there was, I was really the focal point, the person, that they laid eyes on, the customer, because they were doing everything through the mail. They'd be sending out these pamphlets, and people would respond to them, and they had their CSRs, and they'd be talking to them, and they'd sell a policy, and they'd mail the policy. And I said, hold on a second, let me deliver those policies. And like I said, now I could just tell the story. And if you were in sales, they always taught you, right, out of 3 sales, 1 will buy on the spot. A second one will buy if and only if you stay persistent and persevere, continuing to meet with them. And the third one wouldn't buy if you paid for it. So right. Wipe the dust off your feet and move on to the next one.
Yeah.
So those are the old teaching skills, right? If you got 3 no's, rejoice. Why?
Because the next one's a yes.
Because the next, you're closer. You're getting closer to the next one.
So, I hate to jump this far ahead because I think we might talk about a little bit of the recruiting side of your business and that you went into. But is that the number one? That's the number one thing I hear. Is that the number one thing you've always heard is who do I talk to? Right? There's so many people that are either good at the relationship, good at the sales, good at the storytelling, excellent storytellers that will never make it in the financial and insurance business for that reason. They just don't know how to find people to talk to.
Right. It will always be the toughest part. It'll always be the toughest part, especially more now than ever.
So
think about it. Before, you could just walk in the neighborhood and knock on doors and talk to people.
Yeah, no more.
Now you could call them up, and there was no answering machine for the most part back then. They'd answer the phone.
Yeah.
So it is a lot more difficult for agents today.
Just to pierce that contact.
Absolutely.
Did you see the sign when you walked in that Christy put up?
Yes. About weird?
Yeah.
About solicitors?
It says, no solicitors. Don't make this weird.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just more and more like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, when you think about it, we're back in the day, this is probably cliche-ish, right? The sidewalks and the front porch, and people would sit outside and they actually talk to their neighbors.
Sure. We talk about that even here. So I'm a Midwest boy, as you know, and it was still that way when we left in almost 2016. We're in these little subdivisions, and you have driveway beers is what we call it, and that would be the driveway's open. I'm having a beer. The kids are riding the bike. Neighbor comes home, end of the day, sees it, grabs his beer, comes over, and we're just talking. That's
right. And then, by the way, maybe life insurance comes up, or what do you do, Charles?
You get to know people.
Yeah.
I'm
a money manager. I've got my series to sell securities, or I sell life insurance. I have whatever the situation may be. You build relationships, and from those relationships. But today nobody's recruiting today, and again I'm probably getting off the subject, but nobody's recruiting to train agents today. So, Brokers Alliance is doing a phenomenal job today.
Yeah.
And when you think about the difficulties that
Well, that's
people have today.
That genre is almost no different than knocking on the doors. Everybody has so many people knock. I mean, think about the amount of emails and just stuff you get in your box all the time, right? I mean, sorting through that to find out what's minutia. So you know, obviously you identified early having someone to talk to was gold, and you had a massive pool of people from this PNC. So then something must have clicked where you said, well, I think I can help other people do this, because you started something that was somewhat revolutionary at the time, and now it exists where a financial advisor or an insurance agent can pick up a magazine and leaf through it and learn all kinds of stuff and get on the internet. Back then, there was no internet, right?
No.
Because that came into being in my teens. But B, there was really no magazines. There was no newsletter. There was no source of information where people could learn from each other. So here comes Joe.
So I'm selling life insurance in a property and casualty agency, and somebody approached me, wanted to have lunch with me, and so I said, sure, I knew him. So I went to sit down with him, and you know, he was a school teacher, and he was selling life insurance on the side for
familiar story.
For A.L. Williams.
Collecting, was it collecting the debit?
No, not that. No. They were an organization which they would recruit waitresses, mechanics, barbers, hairstylists, out of every single occupation you could possibly
anything
think
but
of.
Current life insurance agents. Everybody else was fair game.
For the most part.
Yeah.
But he came to me, and he wanted, their whole deal was recruiting and building their hierarchy. So he knew I was in the insurance business, so he wanted his product. He wanted me to see his product so that I can then sell under him. So he showed it to me, and I said, well, why should I sell your product when mine's better? He goes, prove it, because he was brainwashed. He thought his was absolutely the best. So we compared, and he looked at it, and he looked at me. He goes, you're right. Can I write for you? Right?
So some light bulbs are now going off in your brain going.
Well, he was fantastic. He would, again, part-time, he would go out every day, every night after school, and he'd make an appointment and he'd go sell. And let's just say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, he sold every one of them. Friday, he didn't. He'd have me on the phone for hours trying to figure out why that fifth one didn't buy. Right? Remember the 1 out of 3 story?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, he didn't care. He wanted 100%, and that's all there was to it. So, yeah, that I said, he'd go out and sell, and then I'd get the teaching. I'm teaching him, right?
The teaching stipend.
Yeah. So, I thought of something. I said, okay, so I talked to my boss over at the PNC shop. I said, I could get a list of insurance agents. Can I send a letter, a mailer to them? He goes, yeah, why not? So I did. And probably within a month or two, I recruited 100 agents. And they were not your independent agent. They were your Prudential, New York Life, MetLife, who were, right? They didn't understand brokerage, so to speak. And we had a Universal Life was relatively new back then.
Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, late 80s, mid 80s. E.F. Hutton was the first company to actually invent Universal Life, and a little company which Lincoln Financial owned was called First Penn Pacific, and they had one, and that's what I would show them. And I'd show them the program, and they'd go out and sell. And before you know it, our little agency, there was my own personal production. I was still selling. There, I'm getting 100, 150 apps a month coming through the agency who became interested in selling Universal Life.
Yeah.
So that's how
because and they didn't have access to it, right? I mean, you're talking to captive agents. It sounds
captive
like
agents.
you were naming off captive agents.
Sure.
They didn't have this
So,
problem.
they're making 40, 50%, 20% on term, 30% on term.
You're showing them something new.
Yeah.
You're teaching them something new.
Teaching.
So here you go again. Here you go again, Joe. Always teaching.
Teaching, motivating, whatever the case may be. But it was good. It was fun. I mean, it was...
and you had one of the first newsletters, right? I mean, you were putting out content for people. Is that true?
With the newspaper?
With the newspaper. For insurance agents early on. What broker?
Well, so I left that agency. I was a little cocky, a little full of myself, and I wanted part ownership of this massive south side of Chicago property and casualty agency. Again, I didn't know what I didn't know. But I know that I'm working. And so they said, well, you can't have part of our agency, but what we'll do is we'll form another corporation, and then we'll be partners in that. Made sense, right? That made sense. Except, it never happened. So I left, and I said, I'm on my own. So I started a company called RAN Marketing, which ultimately became Brokers Alliance, and then just basically started doing the same thing. All the agents had a choice. They could either stay with the agency, who had nobody there to really help them, or come with me. So they all came with me. And I did have a little bit of savings at that point in time to survive on.
In another endeavor. But this one's somewhat similar.
Yeah.
You had figured out the formula.
But we were in, basically in the south side of Chicago, Homewood, Flossmoor, Chicago Heights, Illinois area. That was our world of agents that we would, do business with. Until I walked into a grocery store and I saw the Penny Saver.
I used to deliver the Penny Saver.
Did you?
Well, sometimes I'd get paid to deliver the Penny Saver. Whether it ended up on the porch or not was a different story. But we'd be in the basement in Midlothian, Illinois, and me and my brother would Thursday nights go down and roll them up, roll the papers, put the rubber bands on them. If it was going to rain, put the stinking bags over the top, and then decide if we went out and delivered them. But the Penny Saver, that was the one.
And they, if you walked in a grocery store, they had a stand and they kind of stack them up. So I grabbed one and I said, "This is looking at it, and I said, I'm going to try something." So I found out who published it, found out how much it was going to cost to actually create the newsletter that you're talking about. And there was a guy who sang at church, Aaron, if you know who I'm talking. Yeah, you know Aaron. Mm-hmm. And he was working at a truck company at night, loading trucks. He said, and he was a great athlete. He's not afraid to stand up in front of all these people. So come on in. And so I said, look, we're going to hire you if you want to work for us. First thing I want you to do is I want you to call, 100 agents and ask them where they get their information about products. And they only got it from the one or two carriers that they were licensed to sell with. Mm-hmm. There's a whole world out there now, right?
That they had no idea.
They had no idea existed. So we created what's called the Illinois Broker. And I found out that there were 60,000 licensed life insurance agents in the state. And we bought that list from the Department of Insurance. And we went to a printer. We found a gal working out of her house who did all of the layout and design. We wrote articles. We actually sold advertising to our friendly competitors, mostly in the health insurance field or annuity field. We're pretty much still in life insurance. And it paid for itself. And we mailed it out. 60,000 newsletters. We probably had a staff of 6 or 7 people at the time.
What year? Just give me a ballpark. Is it
I've got
early
actually,
90s?
Actually,
you got the first one?
No, it was, when was that?
92, 91?
Yeah,
90?
yeah, 91, I think.
So I may have heard this story because I think your daughter was stuffing, or that's when you had to lick the stamps, right? You licked the stamps and put them on?
That came after.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Christy and David would sit on the floor, and this is before the newsletter, and we were just doing mailings to agents.
Stuff in envelopes, licking stamps.
Yes. Yeah.
I still remember how those stamps used to taste.
Oh, after a while. And so
It's like paint. If you have enough of them, you just get high.
We did the newspaper. It went out, and the phone went crazy. Send me this, send me that. So I mean, we had no idea. I used to always use this. We're either understaffed or overstaffed at the same time, and we were understaffed for all of the calls that were coming in. I mean, we got it under control, and that ultimately we changed the name to Broker News. It was the Illinois Broker. Then it became Broker News of Illinois, Broker News of Arizona, Nevada, California, Texas, Florida, North Carolina. It grew to 500,000 subscriptions that we would send out every other month. So every 2 months we would send that out to 500,000 agents across the country.
And this was before Insurance Newsnet. This was before Advisor World. This is before really any other publication.
Broker World
was out there.
Broker
right?
World had a magazine. They only had 25,000 subscriptions across the entire country of a population of over 1 million life insurance agents.
Right.
It was, you throw it up against the wall.
There's a theme here. So,
never in the wildest dream.
Starting at life insurance, selling it. Yeah. Now you have a marketing organization, which everybody is flocking to. So what are the common denominators there? Is it, unpack that for me. Is it, it's having something maybe unique that folks hadn't heard about. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Getting in front of people.
We're now getting in front of agents, right? And not in front of customers. We're now getting in front of agents.
Your business model had shifted, but the end game is still somewhat similar in that you have to get in front of your client. Now your client's the agent, right? Now it's not the end consumer, but it's the agent. But you get in front of them by offering something that they've either never heard of or is better than what they currently have.
Right.
And the reason I'm trying to unpack that is because we get questions all the time about, I want to be that successful life insurance agent, or I want to be the successful financial planner, financial advisor, but I can't get in front of people, or I don't have something unique. So what do you tell them now when they're saying my business is either stagnant or I'm trying to get into the business and I can't? There's people going through what you went through today,
yes.
right? They're teachers or steel mill workers or you name it, construction work, and they want to change that. And they set that goal and said, okay, I'm gonna try this. And some of the companies you mentioned are great at recruiting those kind of folks, the MetLifes and the New York Lifes, and saying, yeah, get in, let's try this. And they won't do what you did, which is replace their salary in 3 months. And yet they know that that's what they want to do. What is it? What's the missing ingredient?
I think that's the $64,000 question. It's tougher now today for those guys. Everything, think about how we can just call people on the telephone, which I did when I was a school teacher and I was selling insurance part-time. I literally would take the phone book in my neighborhood and I would just call to make appointments. And
the white pages, right? There was yellow pages and white pages.
Yeah, the white pages.
Take the white pages.
Sunday night, I would just go down and start calling people and talk to them about trying to make an appointment. Are you interested in saving and accumulating money?
That's interesting to me. You just said Sunday night, and I think that might be one of the keys. I'm looking for these little things that differentiate you from the other people. Times have changed, so let's level set that. We know the times have changed, so we're there. But you just said Sunday night, and I think in agents and financial advisors that I've talked to, it's a 5-day work week, and I think that mentality keeps people from achieving what you've achieved, which is it's really never a 5-day work week. If you can find something that you're good at or you're passionate at, it's a 7-day work week, 24 hours a day. You just have to figure out how to manage that, right?
Sure.
Is that right? So when you say Sunday, if that's not what people want to hear, but that's the dirty, ugly, not sexy truth, which is you want to make it, go Sunday night and go in a room and start making phone calls.
Yeah, if you have a desire to do that, you're going to have to work 24/7 mentally, physically to get to the point where you're at least comfortable, so that now you could maybe be a little bit more creative. So at least you have some of the cash flow that you need to come through. Like I said, I wanted to replace and it was a meager salary, a school teacher income, but back then it was okay.
Supporting you and your family. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I just needed to make sure that was coming in. But it's tougher today. Things go full circle. So then, there was fax machines. And we would fax, and it kind of evolved. We were faxing to businesses about, stuff. Do you have a partner? What happens if your partner passed away?
And it was almost like throwing billboards in someone's face in their office.
Yeah,
because it'd come out.
It would come out. They had to look at it, and it was directed to the owner. So if a staff person picked it up, they were going to give it to the owner.
We haven't talked about this much yet, but I once got grounded for sending a fax. Have you heard this story?
No.
Yeah. So
at home?
Yes.
Bob or Sheila?
Yes. Well, probably both. I don't recall that, but I was in a very, very committed relationship at the time. I was 11 years old.
Oh.
And my parents, very conservative. And the idea of being in a relationship at 11 years old, which is, to their credit, probably not smart, but was not the thing to do. You're not in a relationship. So that meant that you can't pick up the phone and talk till midnight with your girlfriend.
Right.
But what you could do is sneak out to your dad's office and write a little letter on a piece of paper and put it in the fax machine so that it would spit out at the other end. I just simply forgot to take the spit out and crumple it up and throw it away. So the next day, my dad came in and saw that fax that I had sent to your daughter.
But ingenious.
Christy.
Ingenious, though.
Well, yeah.
Seriously.
You thought to skirt the rules.
You thought outside the 9 dots, right? I mean,
she might still have that fax too, but
that's great.
That actually was kind of your fault, kind of. I mean, you started this whole thing.
Yeah,
I tell my dad all the time.
Should have never had a fax machine.
I tell my dad all the time. I'll tell you right now. Thanks for coming. Because it started this whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I should have never had a fax.
You can say that to me too, right?
I just did.
Oh, I thought you were talking to your dad.
Oh no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this one works for you too.
We talk about this business. Real quick, Charles, what I don't really understand, and it changes, but this whole cryptocurrency, I don't get it. And then I really didn't
Neither does Sam Bankman-Fried, who just lost $1 billion.
Wasn't he? He was
or billions of dollars.
Wasn't he a big donor towards the Democratic?
Yeah, he sure was.
So when I first heard about cryptocurrency, I didn't understand it. Then I heard that you can't take your winnings, so to speak, and turn them into cash. You have to use them to buy a Tesla, or whoever else accepts.
You can. There's enough exchanges now. That was true at one point when Bitcoin was the only thing out there, right? And then you started to see even like on Craigslist back in the day where they would say, "Well, I accept Bitcoin," to buy something or sell something.
Yeah, thank you for the cigar, by the way.
That's good. I like these cigars. They're mild. They're the only cigars I can do anymore. Is the nice mild ones. So yeah, that was a thing, but it's not a thing anymore in that there's enough exchange. You can convert this to, but it's not always easy to convert it. And as we've seen, some of them just go belly up. So when you think of a currency that's backed by something, so either supply and demand or actual currency. There's a water coin which is supposedly backed by water supplies. There's a gold coin.
Don't tell that to Rio Verde, right?
So you would think that those kind of coins can't just disappear, but they do in fact just go away.
So again, financial services business. You've got selling life insurance. You have and it's evolved. You have annuities, which have really transformed. Using indexes as a means. Do financial advisors go around putting Bitcoin in somebody's portfolio?
That's
a question for you.
The answer is yes. the answer is yes, and I mean, the bigger question is it appropriate? And I think the reason that advisors might find it a little bit scary to do is people don't understand it. Just as you said, the average person doesn't understand why these things fluctuate. You can explain why a stock fluctuates or a bond fluctuates.
Right.
There's mathematical reasons behind all of that, and some emotional reasons for sure. But in crypto, it's all emotions. There's really no mathematical reasons behind the rise and fall of cryptocurrency. And so when something like that happens, even in a small portion of the crypto market, it just rocks the entire
So my
industry.
friend said he had an opportunity to buy a Bitcoin, I think, I don't know, one for $1,500. He remembers that. And he didn't do it.
I remember when it was $1, $2, $3. I remember I was in a church at the time doing music practice, and I remember reading this thing called Bitcoin and going, "What the hell is this thing?"
And then 60,000
Yeah.
went to 60,000 a coin.
And unfortunately, what you get when those things happen, it's like the Wild West with the gold rush, and people go, "Oh, this let me jump on this wagon." But what they don't realize is the wagon's kind of already slowing by the time you jump on it.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening recently. So, is it something for clients? I think it certainly can be a diversification tool. I think you have to know as an advisor, your client's not going to understand it because, let's face it, you really probably don't understand it as an advisor. The true, mechanisms. Do you understand blockchain and how that works? Unless you're a tech guru, the answer is probably no, right? So you can be the most brilliant financial mind in the world and still not understand cryptocurrency.
But there's a lot of people out there who want to get rich quick, and they think they could just
100%.
Yeah.
Like the lottery. This last Powerball was what, $2 billion?
$2 billion.
$2 billion.
Did you buy one?
I didn't. I buy the $1 and $5 ones.
I won I had one Powerball number, won $4.
Did you get your $4? What do you? So this is an interesting question, and it's something that I've heard you preach before. So I'd like to know what your take is on the savings of the money, right? Because you hear all these horror stories. In fact, there's a podcast out there now. This guy dedicates he's won the lottery, and he's dedicated his working career to talking to other lottery winners, because so many of them go broke within 12 months. So many, the statistics are unreasonable, right? Unreasonably high. So you come into all this money that you think should last you and your generation after and the next generation, more money than you could ever spend, and all of a sudden it's gone. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really change whether you have money or not, right? So even when you don't make a lot, and you've told me this before, what's the first thing you do when you do make money?
Put some away.
You got to put it away.
Yeah, you put it away for a rainy day. You never know what's going to happen, right? Look what happened to COVID. All of a sudden, people couldn't go to work. What about all those people who, if they didn't work, they didn't make money, and then they couldn't work. They didn't make money. So how did they live? Credit cards and all that other good stuff. One of the things about the insurance business, and it rapidly moves, and it gives people opportunities. Agents, you were talking about, how does an agent? There are so many niche products, right? I mean, people. Why don't some people get into the stock market? So then, annuities, they came up with the indexes that you could make money, you can't lose money,
but kind of participate in the stock market a little bit if the
but
market goes up, but you're not going to lose.
But it's not, the money's not in that index.
Risk free.
They're just using that index as a barometer, right? But so if those were bylines, or life insurance, somebody all of a sudden added living benefits to life insurance. That people have had parents who've had heart attacks or strokes or who had cancer. I'm a cancer survivor, right? If I didn't work, how do I make money? Well, in the life insurance policy, they put that safeguard in there with the critical and chronic illness riders. Now, you think about, people don't want to buy $500,000 worth of life insurance. Back in my day when I was selling, a lot of the women were stay-at-home moms, and they, if they got a $200,000 check or $100,000 check, what are they going to do with it, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't have any idea. So now you can buy life insurance, but you can replace the income. So what's your mortgage? Well, it's $2,000 a month. All right, so we'll sell you a $2,000 a month mortgage protection policy at a fraction of the cost. So, it's life. The base is life insurance, but there's so many little words that you can say to somebody. Did you know you didn't have to die to collect from your life insurance policy? All those little words you could just say, what do you mean?
But if those people aren't around you talking, and
you can't sell insurance and be an introvert and sit in your room and never see anybody or talk to anybody. I mean, I guess you could try to buy internet leads.
Yeah. I mean, so that's the reason. That money that lottery money we were talking about just comes and goes. Comes in, goes out, you spend it on things you think are worthwhile. Everyone comes for a loan. You don't have people trust.
I read that article, I think, that you're talking about that guy who, kind of coaches people. But a settlement from an accident or whatever, they just burn through that money.
You also have a unique way of thinking about it, I think, and you've passed this on to your daughter, which is you've made a lot of money in your lifetime. I think we could say that. And yet I still sometimes get the sense that you think you're poor. And you say, always, I'm broke, always. But you're not really. But that mindset, I think, has helped you because it allows you to squirrel away money. Because if you think you don't have enough of it, you want to save it, right?
Yeah.
That mindset, and that certainly permeated down to at least one of your children.
Well, I got it from my mother, who just pounded it in my head. And I'm better off for it, right? I mean, you could live for the day. I never liked the idea of struggling for that. Where am I going to get that next amount of money to pay that mortgage, or go get groceries, or put $10 of gas in the tank this time
instead of being able to fill it.
I'm still that way. It's funny that you say that. I am still that way today.
I know you are.
I know,
I know you are.
I
think that, and I don't say that negatively, I think that's what's gotten you to this point of being able to live comfortably and have a retirement that a lot of people won't have or think or dream of, and yet they're spending now instead of saying, well, let me pretend. Yeah. I don't know how else to say it. Let me pretend like I'm broke because that'll make me squirrel away some money, even though I'm not broke.
And I'm always looking for ways to, find an income stream, wherever it is. And, not to get religious, because I'm not a religious person.
You have faith.
But I'm a
There's a difference.
I am a believer, and I know that, we need to take care of those that we leave behind. And you're born with nothing, and you're going to go home with nothing. But it doesn't mean you just, you spend money like a drunken sailor and have fun, and then you go into all kinds of financial problems. So, no, I wish more people were like that.
Yeah.
One of the things, too, that people don't understand about the life insurance business, which is, I think, absolutely fantastic, and not necessarily life insurance business, the insurance business. The federal government, I think, Medicare, Social Security, the disability, all that stuff. They spend or pay out about $1.5 billion a day in benefits, and the insurance companies right behind them at about $1.2 billion a day. That every day, all the insurance companies out there, they're as far as being an auto insurance claim or a life insurance or a disability claim or an annuity payout. They're bringing a tremendous amount of benefit. Now, what if the insurance companies weren't around? The government can't, they keep borrowing money to pay some of this stuff. And Social Security, right? What do they say? It's going to be gone again.
I feel like they've been saying that since I was 10.
They have. Is it a tactic to have people save on their own?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But,
so the insurance companies are the second social safety net, right?
Yeah.
The government's the first one, and the insurance companies are right behind being number two. They're very important.
But parents, it's their responsibility. They raise these kids. They have kids in this world. They need to be able to teach them how to survive, not just expect or that they're enabled to live off the government.
Well, I'll just become a TikTok star, Dad.
There you go.
I don't need to save.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Let me get on YouTube. So you mentioned cancer survivor, and that's not something you and I have talked a lot about ever, and I've known you since I'm 10 years old. So how long is that? I'm going to date myself, 30 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's that? What is that like? I mean, you were literally given a 6-month death sentence, basically, right?
I was 47 years old. By the way, sometimes insurance agents, they need to buy their own policies, right? I just got approved maybe 2 months, 3 months, I can't remember exactly, for $1 million of life insurance premium at Preferred Plus, right? What I call the walk-on
benefit, sure.
walk-on water, right? Athletic, healthy. 47 years old. David was helping me take down Christmas lights. It was actually January 1st. And I was weak. I was shaky. Didn't feel good. Started losing weight. Went to the doctor. Couldn't find anything. Went back. Something kind of triggered them. Said, we're going to put you in a hospital right now. So things were going good. Worked, moved to Fountain Hills, Arizona, beautiful place. Moved the business there. Things are rocking and rolling. And they said, Mr. Racich, get your affairs in order. You have pancreatic cancer, which at that time, it has, the life expectancy now is maybe 18 months, but it was that time barely 6 months. And, but I never believed it. I didn't believe it. And, I talk about my time in church, and, I never thought, never thought of reading the Bible. And I said, I'm going to read the Bible. I'm going to start reading the Bible. I started going to a church where they actually were teaching you what the Bible had to say. I consider that boot camp. I never went to the Army. So, boot camp, what do they prepare you for? They prepare you for war. Doesn't mean you're going to war, but they prepared you for it. But that walk that I had where I learned, the Word of God and to stand on what that was being taught to me was my boot camp. And I didn't believe it. When doctors would say something, nope. And, things will come to your mind, negative things. You're never going to see your daughter get married. Your kids aren't going to, you're not going to see them grow up totally. And I just said, no, I'm not going to believe that. Just wouldn't. And by the grace of God, here I am.
Do you think there's power in that mental state of being? Like that physically affects us?
Absolutely. We're not, again, I'm not a religious person, but, we're physical, but we're spiritual too. So, and you accept it, and I accepted it. And I stood on that word of God. And I know that got me through that tough time.
And that
so
was
it's been
6-month death sentence. How long ago was that?
22 years ago.
22 years. Yeah, that's pretty. Cheers to that.
Yeah, 22 years ago. Yeah, thanks. And it's kind of my mission. I have, everybody probably knows somebody who's had a stint with pancreatic cancer. And
cancer of some sort. It's very prevalent, right?
And pancreatic, because people know that. So they'll call me up and they say, my mother, my friend, my work associate, can you talk to them? And I've been to hospitals, talking to people, just trying to encourage them. I've had people tell me, no, I'm not going to go that God way. They try to fight it themselves, and you just have to surrender that. But do
you think it changed? Obviously, this maybe is a very dumb question. It changed the way you lived life. Did it change your finances? Did the way you treat your finances? Did it change the way you treated just life in general when that happened?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that point in time where Brokers Alliance. I wanted them. I remember thinking, I want that to be the largest brokerage agency in the country. That was my thought. I want
after the diagnosis.
No, before.
Oh, before. Okay.
I want it to be, I'm going to grow this thing to, I got the newspaper.
Yeah.
I'm going to, kind of driven. That changed my mind. Then you're going, well, you could kill yourself trying to be at the top. And then you say, no,
it's not worth it.
Yeah. I'm comfortable. Back in the day, you used to live within your means, right? You live within your means. And then if you make a little bit more, you grow a little bit more, well, then you could maybe increase your means a little bit. But that's me.
Yeah.
That's me.
Wow. There's a lot of nuggets in there. You could unpack that for days. But now
I
that
had
you're
life
20
insurance. I had life insurance.
insurance.
And I knew that, and again, if you're going to have kids, you're going to raise kids, you're responsible for those kids. And, things happen. In the office in Fountain Hills, the guy who owns Agency One, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. He unexpectedly just died the other day. They don't know. He woke up. He was gone.
Yeah.
So again,
it's coming. It's coming for all of us, right? I mean, death
and
and taxes. That's what they say.
Again,
I don't know who they are, but they say that.
Life insurance is a means to protect those behind you.
So 22 years later, any regrets? Anything you look back and go, what would I do differently?
I wish I'd have stayed in music a little bit more. But no, the insurance business is a great business. And, again, I could tell you a story, and I don't know how much time we have, but, you don't really, you're selling life insurance. You're making a decent income. But when you think about the residual, and when you actually deliver a death claim to that, beneficiary, I mean, boy.
You're making a difference for somebody.
I mean, talk about emotional. And that what you did paid off. No, hopefully it never pays off. But, again, we're not leaving this world alive, right? But, you've got to be bold. You got to, there's a little bit of hoops that you have to,
grab life by the balls.
And you got to steer these customers. Yeah. You don't know their pocketbook, right? You don't know, but, how much, they'll drop their life insurance. They'll drop this. They'll drop, any insurance to keep their cable bill going, their cell phone going, but they won't, they'll drop that life insurance policy. Nobody wants to think you're going to die. Yeah.
So, again, all kinds of nuggets. It's been awesome to talk. I think we could just keep going, but I know you have a dinner to go to. So if you had one thing to leave to your kids, a nugget, I think in this last hour, there's been a numerous amount of nuggets that we could unpack. But if there was one nugget and you only had one thing to say, and this was it, what would you tell your kids?
Keep the faith. Keep the faith. Keep your eye on the prize, man. Just don't let the shiny things distract you. But I am blessed. Not to brag about you and to brag about Christy and David and Ashley. You've done such a wonderful job with your kids. And you know what? Raise up a child in the way they should go, and hopefully they won't depart from
Hopefully they keep going that way.
Absolutely.
It's been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Charles.
Thank you so much.
This was a lot of fun.
Cheers.
And good luck to everybody out there in the financial services business. It really is it's a great job. It's a great opportunity to help others.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks.
Acrylic Financial Incorporated is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by those on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Acrylic Financial. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and unless otherwise stated are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance, and some guests may have been paid a fee to be interviewed for this show.